And thanks again for taking the time to find us, especially this week, Heroes Week. My salute to service. I think it's our 7th year. Somebody said it was our 6th, but whatever it is, it's an honor to do. And I've enjoyed the process. I've learned a lot. I've met some outstanding people, including this week. Young police officer from Racine, a couple from Washington County, her husband, Tyler, Elizabeth and her husband, Tyler. He's a detective, cracked a big case along with his teammates, and his fellow officers up there in Washington County cracked a human trafficking, sex trafficking case recently. And then yesterday with a firefighter, battalion chief, Jeremy Starr in Milwaukee. And as I was putting this week together, I was thinking long and hard about what kind of stories I wanted to do. And I wanted to make sure that, and this is going to be a very unique half hour because we're actually going to have an example of a citizen first responder coming up. That it's an old story, but it's a great story that I want to retell. But let's focus at this moment on Milwaukee police officer Dan Morrell. This is a story that I think was really set up well by a local TV station talking about what happened here. And then I'll come back and talk about it. And then Andy Schwartz is gonna be a part of our celebration and honoring with some comments she made. Here's the piece from Channel 12.
We're learning the name of the Milwaukee police officer shot in the leg during a standoff with an armed man yesterday. The Milwaukee Police Association just released a statement saying 38-year-old Dan Morrell is recovering from a broken femur and nicked artery. The police union says his doctors are unsure of his recovery time or whether he'll regain full mobility in his leg. Police say they responded to a home near 18th and Fairmount yesterday morning for a domestic violence-related call. According to a search warrant obtained by 12 News, a man identified as 25-year-old Harold Martin opened fire on police with a rifle with 4 kids inside the home. Martin released the children and surrendered after an hours-long standoff.
And I wanted to play that because I think it describes one of the reasons I chose Officer Dan Morrell is because we've talked a lot on my old program and this program about the risk to public safety, the lack of resources, lack of people to do those jobs, lack of interest in going into those professions. But in the next 2 days, I'm going to focus on stories that involve high-risk situations and, serving a search warrant. Any law enforcement professional will tell you that domestic violence calls are some of the most violent and risky for the men and women who do that job. And I wanted to highlight the fact that there is that element of risk, and yet we still see these individuals step up in amazing ways. And through my sources, I know that the officer is recovering, very serious injury. Whenever you're talking about an artery in a leg, you're talking about a serious risk to your life and health. And we wish the officer well. Doesn't matter. I want to focus on the fact that he stepped up for us on that day. I had Annie Schwartz on the program yesterday. She joins me for the public safety edition of the Political Power Hour. She had some really great on-point comments about Officer Morrell. She made them yesterday.
Dan did what Milwaukee police officers do every day, especially the officers on that unit, which is to show up at a situation, and they're unable to. They try to de-escalate. They get a negotiator out there. They try to get someone to say, hey, at least let the kids go. And Dan was out there along with other officers on that unit,
yes,
trying to get this guy to come out because there were children in this house. Every one of those officers will tell you that they think about their own children when they are out there saving other people's children.
Yeah.
And it is, I don't like to see just a fast story on it, and then it's off the news and we're on to the next thing.
I love that last piece. One of the reasons I'm bringing this story back is because I think we have to remember the service and sometimes the price paid by individuals who put their lives on the line. We see so much conversation about all the negatives associated with policing in America and how we struggle with certain things related to race and how people act when they're arrested or confronted with law enforcement. And yet, even with that backlash, even with that confrontational aspect of what that relationship is now, community-oriented policing departments are actively working on those concerns. We had Officer Hood on Monday talking about that, focused on that issue. We see the men and women, this case Milwaukee, and Dan is a member of the tactical unit, and I heard his story on the media like most people did, found out about the officer from people that worked with him. And I said, we have to honor that individual because that's an example of what I'm talking about. High risk, yet they don't run away from that. They go towards it and they do the people's work in a completely unselfish fashion. If you ask me, why did I pick Officer Morrell when he couldn't be here? That's not the point. Do I love to meet all the officers? Absolutely. Detectives? Absolutely. EMTs? Sure. But the story is the important piece. And as long as I have this microphone and this show, we're going to celebrate those stories because they need to be told. At some point in the future, I will meet Officer Dan Morrell. And I'll share everything I just said with him personally. But I wanted to make a statement with this story. Is that when you talk about policing, community-oriented policing, issues you have with police or law enforcement or public safety, remember the individuals who do the work, the heavy lifting. And I'll have another example of that in studio tomorrow from Milwaukee's police department. All right. We'll congratulate Officer Dan Morrell, our 4th of 5 honorees for Salute to Service.